Hi there, everyone. I'm Alison Fair, consultant here at Bluesky Strategy Group, and today I am joined by my colleagues Susan Smith, Neil Brody, and Cameron Holstrom for the latest episode of What You Need to Know, a Canadian Polycast. Morning, guys. Silly season, what we like to call here kind of in the political bubble on Parliament Hill, and it kind of signals that the MPs are getting ready to break for the summer. Now, what would you say, why is this time of year important? And Cam, you're the guru that we kind of go to for all things that procedural. Are there any thing that we need to know right now and pay attention to that the MPs need to get done before they leave Ottawa?
Well, first off is, especially for the government, there's a lot of government bills that are on the table. They still need to get done, namely a budget, which still has not passed through the House and obviously still needs to get through the Senate. There are proposed changes to the Elections Act to allow for a safe COVID election that they're in committee right now getting clause by clause review, but they have to come back to the House. There's the government's bill on the new Broadcast Act, C10. That still has to happen. C12, which is the net zero emissions bill, that still has to happen. These are priorities the government's put out there that they've made clear they want to get done before the House rises. And as of today, they've got 4 days to do it. That's not a lot of time. That's not very easy. And frankly, it's become very easy for the opposition to hold it up if they choose, which the Conservatives to this point have been making an effective play of. It's good, but when it comes to how this plays out, if we're to assume that there's not going to be an election, these things must happen. It's just that simple. Otherwise, there are consequences. And the question isn't me, are we going to get those done, and how does that play out? To me, the curiosity in this as well is that under normal circumstances, the tension in the place would have been more than enough to have sent everyone home into the polls. Yet, just yesterday, we saw this government held in contempt for refusing to supply documents from public health. And the literally historical move of calling the president of the Public Health Agency Canada to the bar. Never in Canadian history has a senior civil servant had this done to them and forced them. And that's just where the tension has gone. Normally, you wouldn't get to that point because normal political gravity would apply and an election would have been created. But because of COVID, people have had to try to make things work a bit longer, and we end up in a situation like this.
So what happens if we don't get this stuff passed before, because what the latest they can do is the 23rd, which is Wednesday. What happens if they don't get all this stuff passed, like especially the budget bill?
Well, then it becomes a matter of trying to get consensus to bring the House back if they choose, if they want. Again, I'll be very curious to see if that happens. To me, the question will be at what point does the government basically fish or cut bait? I think they're all in right now on what it is they want to get done. But there are certain things like the budget that just have to be done. That's not an optional one. And the fact is that it's not that it's not passing, it's just not moving.
They can invoke closure. They can invoke closure to make things happen. It's all, I think, at this point, Alison, there's the legislative agenda that they want to get done, but there's also a political agenda. And I think the Liberals are trying to show that Parliament isn't working, and therefore there may be a need for an election. And quite frankly, the Conservatives, more than the other opposition parties, are playing directly into that narrative. So the more obstructionist the opposition parties are, in particular Aaron O'Toole's Conservatives, the more the Liberals could then turn to say, the Prime Minister could go to the Governor General when we get one, which I think we will get actually before Canada Day, I anticipate. They'll say, look, this isn't working anymore. We need to go to the polls. And that's what I think. They won't do it right away. They'll wait to see how things play out the summer with variant, et cetera. But they'll invoke closure, I think, to get the budget moving through. But other than that, the legislative stuff will either get through or it'll die on the order paper. Or we come back in the fall and there is no election. That's what.
Neil, does this mean anything for our clients and those watching in terms of the process? Is it any of concern that we're not seeing this stuff passed yet, or it should just kind of be on the radar, but not of total concern?
Well, the most important thing for the Liberal Party is to get the budget passed. That then allows funds to flow and new programs to be developed over the next 12-month period. So even if the politicians go away for the summer and there's an election in the fall, there's still funding earmarked for certain activities over the summer that our clients can engage the government on, the public servants, even if the politicians are out. The rest of the legislative agenda, the internet, what some people might call the internet censorship bill, or the toothless greenhouse gas emissions bill, if those don't pass, those become headlines for the election that we're all expecting in the fall. But the Liberals can go out in the fall and say, if you reelect us, a vote for the Liberal Party is a vote for, internet censorship and toothless greenhouse gas emission regulations. Which they would frame differently than me, because I'm no friend of the political Liberal Party. But all of those things become fodder for the next election. The real piece of legislation that must pass is the budget bill.
And there's one thing I'll note. Sorry to cut in. One thing I will add to that: in the budget bill, there's the extension of COVID programs. The fact is that right now, some COVID programs like the CRB, rent sports, those things expire in a matter of weeks as they stand right now. And that is part of the budget, is to extend them further. So there's a real serious consequence if that budget does not get passed beyond the political, that all of a sudden can directly affect Canadians in the pocketbook and maybe put people in a lot of serious distress. And no party wants to be the one to wear the blame for that.
It'll get passed.
Yeah.
Sorry, Susan?
It will get passed.
Yeah.
Budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. So if once summer hits us on Sunday, and what can we expect strategically from all these parties then past the 23rd? Susan, we'll start with you.
Well, I think the government, once the budget bill gets passed, I think you'll see a flurry of announcements over the summer. You'll see funding moving out the door, and that's been part of their commitment, whether it's broadband funding, trying to get more people on board, whether it's infrastructure, trying to get more shovels into the ground, climate change, those kinds of things, that you will see the government continuing to try to push the agenda that it's set forward, because they can keep going until they can't, until the prime minister asks for the election to happen. And so it's important for people to understand that Ottawa's not going to stop this summer. It's actually going to be very busy. So people who've applied for program funding, that's important to keep following up, because those kinds of things will move along. The other thing is those processes will be happening, and when and if there is an election, it's only 30 days. So it doesn't mean that the officials don't stop, put their pens and pencils and mouses down and stop working and doing the work. So it's a constant. An election this time around will be a blip more than anything. It could be a longer blip if there's a change in government. There could be
elections are blips.
Well, no, but I'm saying from a perspective of, if you've got programs, if you've got projects that you're trying to advance. The other thing, sorry, Alison, I'm taking a long time to answer here. The other thing that can be expected this summer is campaigns, leaders out on the campaign trail. We're getting vaxxed up. You're going to see people more. I don't know if there'll be big barbecues, but there will be some barbecues that'll happen. And I think the parties will be nominating their candidates. So it will be kind of a busy and interesting summer. And I think we're going to slowly get back to seeing people. And some of the people we might get to see are local politicians.
So Neil, do you think we're going to be that they're going to be out there and about, and we're going to be a busy summer, as Susan says, for the politicians and for us who watch?
Well, firstly, I'll say I don't know how any politician can say that people must physically distance over the summer after you saw many world leaders at the G7 arm in arm looking at fireworks, toasting various proposals.
Strict protocols, strict protocols.
But the actual on the ground reality will be a patchwork, because the federal government has downloaded this to the provinces. So while, for example, Nova Scotia may open up, Ontario may not, or Manitoba may open up and Alberta may not. So you'll see a patchwork of what's open over the summer. But for the summer, it'll be pre-campaign mode, and behind the scenes, political parties will be polishing their campaign platforms. And so it'll be important over the summer to engage with politicians both locally and regionally to get ideas into them, to get into the final copy of the platforms. if indeed we're going to a fall election. That'll be the main thrust of work this summer for people like us, is engaging the political parties to get ideas into the platform.
So Cam, how do people get engaged this summer with their politicians? What are ways that you can think of that we can, in this COVID world, get the attention of the politicians so it gets in the platform? And what are the things they should be thinking about?
Well, first, it is engaging directly with the parties, with either their local representatives or do it with party leaders. The fact is, they've been going through that process because there's always the risk. That's part of the beauty and the curse of a minority parliament, that you always have to be ready. So when you come, you should be ready, which is great because you've had to be ready all this time. The problem just leaves you on this perpetual hamster wheel of election preparedness, and that can be a little rough on people. So they've been going through that process throughout. So they're always looking for ideas. And because situations constantly change, obviously the platforms themselves will evolve to the very day that they go out. So that offers opportunity for people. The other thing I would note too is that when it comes to the engagement, we can look at what's happened in provincial elections in other provinces so far, where during COVID and how they operated, what they did, and what was different and not. And I found it notable that in almost every single election that happened provincially throughout COVID, there was some form of voter contact, door-to-door knocking, candidates doing some kind of activity in that way which would be relatively normal. Given that we're further along, more people are vaccinated, things are opening up a bit more, I would expect to see that just as much as you ever did before. So again, the opportunity, I think, to directly interact with, again, local representatives, local MPs, local candidates is going to be there in probably a greater way than I think most people might have anticipated originally. But again, I think the key thing is engage. If you don't put your idea on the table, it may never come out, or if it comes out, it may not be the way you like it.
Okay. Now, I have to say, over the course of this last 10 minutes or so, I've never heard the word election so much in a talk, probably about 20, 25 times now. Okay, are we definite? Because I know we've done this before, an election in the fall. Susan?
I think so, though I'll put the caveat on the Delta variant.
Okay.
And if we hit a fourth wave, but vaccines are working. People are getting double vaxxed. I'm double vaxxed. Our colleagues are on their way to becoming double vaxxed. So I think yes, in the fall, kids will be back in school. Parents will feel better. The programs, the support programs will be winding down. The economy will be opening up. People will have had a summer on patios and restaurants and being able to see their friends and family again. They'll be in a much better mood. So I think that will be the time.
Neil?
The longer governments hang around, the more opportunity there is for bad news, and we've started to see that creep out in the last 2 or 3 months here with Minister Sajjan's mishandling of sexual harassment in the Canadian Forces, and the latest civil war in the Green Party leaking out into attacks on the Liberal Party. So I would think that the Liberals would like to go to an election today. That's not logistically feasible. So in the fall is fantastic. The fall allows them to bask in the warm glow of well-vaccinated population and avoid the 2022 review of the pandemic, the handling of the pandemic by the Auditor General or the Budget Officer. So it's a nice little sweet spot. Getting the election done before the end of October is probably a must for Justin Trudeau, because at the end of October is the G20 in Rome. The beginning of November is COP21. I forget what COP stands for, but it's some environmental thing going on for 12 days in Glasgow, and the Trudeau brand won't allow him to miss either of those.
True. Cam?
Assuming that the end of the election results in a Trudeau-led government again.
Oh, I think I just heard you concede that, Neil.
Assuming that that's what happens.
Okay, so 2 yays. Cam, are you adding to it the fall? Definitely.
I've been on Team Fall since Christmas, so I'd be a bit of a hypocrite now if I backed out. But I will add 2 caveats to this. One is the first that Susan mentioned, is COVID itself. As much as the parties want to decide when election is coming, really COVID is in charge here, and anyone who decides to ignore that fact is putting themselves at great peril. And it's true that while case counts are coming down, that's fantastic. Measures are taking hold and people are getting vaccinated. we are seeing the rise in cases of the Delta variant. Like I know in Ontario, we had less than 400 new cases yesterday, but on the James Bay coast right now, they've got about 150 cases of the Delta variant amongst kids. Yeah. Kitchener-Waterloo is seeing a spike. So again, it's like you're seeing this play out. It's just be a matter of, could this backtrack again towards a fourth wave? And if it does, I think that puts a serious damper on it. The other thing I will throw out there is, I'll just be very blunt about it. Our colleague Joe Jordan loves to point out that governments only call elections they think they can win, and the polling is a bit suspect right now. It's slipping. It's a bit all over the place. You're seeing the Liberals kind of stagnated up and down in the mid-30s. The Conservatives are struggling, and seeing some vote in the West kind of splitting off towards the right, towards Maxime Bernier or Jay Hill's new formation. You're seeing the Greens in disarray. And the NDP numbers are consistently high at this point. The question is that obviously campaigns are their own beast. Things can move in a campaign. But if I were making a call based on what I'm seeing today, would I feel confident I'd come out of it in a better position than I am in already? That's not a guaranteed proposition as it might have been a few months ago. And if things continue, and as Neil aptly pointed out, as more things start to pile up and more things start to weigh down on a government, has this government lost its best chance at winning a majority? And if that's the case, do they even want to go to the polls? I think that's the less likely scenario, but I'm seeing it more and more, and I'm finding it very interesting to see where some things are shifting and how this could play out in the next election.
Well, it'll be a very interesting summer, that's for sure, and it'll keep us all busy and on our toes, which is great. So if there is an election in the fall, we can be sure that we're, as a group, Bluesky is going to keep everyone on top of the latest announcements and what they mean for everyone. So Susan, Neil, and Cam, thank you for joining me today. I hope you all have a lovely weekend.
Thanks, Alison.
Take care.
Thank you, Alison. Have a great one.
Good weekend, everyone.
And thank you guys, the viewers, for tuning into What You Need to Know, a Canadian Polycast. Take care, and until next time.
Bluesky Strategy Group is one of Canada's leading public affairs firms. For government relations, lobbying, and strategic communications advice across Canada, visit us at blueskystrategygroup.com. Bluesky Strategy Group is a proud member of the Global Communications Alliance.